Welcome to the Svetz Shot, giving you my takes, whether you like it or not. Check out my latest analysis video of Pusha T's diss to Drake. Link is in the description. And with that, let's go. After an intriguing album release party in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, of all places, Kanye West has dropped his 7-track album, Ye. And while we could get into the actual musical merit or the quality of the album itself, the themes presented offer a more interesting discussion. Now, a quick background about me: I'm diagnosed with clinical depression and social anxiety. So when a creative decides to open up about mental illness, depression, or anything of the sort, I'm usually pretty intrigued because I want to see how I can relate to it and what it actually says about the culture. So with this album's themes of depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, and addiction, I've had it on repeat steady. Because some of these tracks have a lot to say, especially about mental illness, but more specifically, bipolar disorder, which should be commended since very few rap talks about mental illness legitimately, and virtually none is open about bipolar disorder. The first track, I Thought About Killing You, wastes no time in diving into Kanye's mental illness and overall the state of his psyche. The most beautiful thoughts are always beside the darkest. Today I thought about killing you. I contemplated premeditated murder. And I think about killing myself. And I love myself way more than I love you. Here, Kanye is looking himself directly in the mirror with a Jekyll-Hyde complex, essentially. Actually, Rap Genius puts it very beautifully, talking about the shadow self, which is the idea of the darkness inside. And Kanye loves his shadow self more than he loves the light inside of him. The shadow self is allowed to have freedom. It doesn't answer to anyone. It is all based off of egotism and self-fulfillment, while the light self has to deal with maintaining relationships, fatherhood, dealing with public pressure, and overall just maintaining order in society. Later in the verse, he also touches on how society probably thinks he should sugarcoat these statements, that he should somehow make this all seem okay. But that's not how mental illness works. Sometimes there is no light, and there is only darkness. And in order to move forward, you have to accept that, which is something he does. And this statement is powerful, because sometimes you're just not okay, and you shouldn't be looked down upon. Continuing into Yikes, here Kanye's touching on how his mental state can scare him, even frighten the people around him, but also how susceptible he is to addiction. His chorus absolutely illustrates this point. Shit can get menacing, frightening, find help. Sometimes I scare myself. In the first verse, one simple line immediately connects to his bipolar. See, this the type of high that don't come down. He's directly describing mania, a common effect of bipolar disorder, and an element of most mental illness. A short, emphasized euphoria that can vanish quickly due to violent mood swings. And of course, at the end, he directly addresses everything. He admits to his third-person perspective and his bipolar disorder. But instead of thinking it's a negative, he talks about how it helped him with his creativity and his innovation, calling it a superpower. And while we could get into the discussion of if it's a superpower or not, the sentiment does remain true. He's taking something described usually as a negative thing and switching it into something positive. He also talks about his opioid addiction, which he was hospitalized for in 2016. Now, again, I could see this last line dividing a community and being somewhat controversial. But I think we need to look more at the idea behind it. Taking this negative, stigmatized thing and switching it into a silver lining, into a positive. I think that's somewhat commendable. But I do have to admit, he does get quite sidetracked. The third track, All Mine, has virtually no mention of bipolar, mental illness, depression, or anything like that, and comes off more as a lustful track than anything else. The fourth track, Wouldn't Leave, acts more as a tribute to his wife Kim Kardashian, who he basically admits that he has these problems, but he really appreciates her for sticking with him throughout all of it. It talks more about their relationship than anything with his actual mental illness, mental psyche, or bipolar. He does touch on the public's perception of his mental state, but doesn't really say anything powerful about it. He just kind of brushes it off. And No Mistake is way more a diss to Drake than anything else, which, geez, kicking a puppy while he's down. Alright, Ye, I see you. I'll see you. But then we get back on track with Ghost Town. As Kanye sings about longing for an unscrutinized existence, to be healthy, and to just feel happy and be left alone, he understands that part of that is accepting his bipolar disorder, understanding it, and moving forward. Now, Kid Cudi's chorus could be interpreted as a message to society, but when I look at it, I see it more as an inner monologue to Kanye himself, as he tries to balance the light side and the dark side of him. As for 070 Shake's feature, she's directly talking about the freedom Kanye feels when he accepts this mental illness. Instead of just hiding it from everyone else, he recognizes the creativity that it brings and fully embraces it. The final track, Violent Crimes, acts more as a letter to his daughter North than anything else. But because it comes right after this empowering, blissful acceptance in Ghost Town, it can be interpreted as Kanye setting aside his egotism, understanding that while he does have to be somewhat self-absorbed in order to fight this battle, he needs to be present for his kids, especially his daughter, and his mind needs to change. Despite this album being arguably his most self-serving project to date, he does understand that he needs to set aside some of those selfish tendencies in order to help the ones he loves. Evidenced by his actual album title not being capitalized. It's straight lowercase. The 7-track Journey is a complete inner monologue. Well, except for the Drake diss. But this is authentic and brave. He's letting us into his battle with mental illness. And I think that's awesome. And yes, granted, you can talk about the Trump stuff, you can talk about the context of the slavery comments, and all the other crazy things that Kanye's did. But the fact that he's shining light on something that doesn't get much light, specifically bipolar, I feel like that can only stand to help. And even with its faults, Ye is a powerful album and can only stand to help the mental health community and drive conversation, pushing it into the mainstream so that it can't be ignored. But what do y'all think? Is Kanye taking a stance on mental health stigma, or is he purely acting out of self-motivation? Whatever your thoughts, comment and let me know exactly what you're thinking. I want to hear from you. Hit me on Twitter, Instagram, or wherever else I can be contacted. And remember, this is all just my opinion. You're entitled to yours. So voice it. Like, comment, subscribe, and don't be afraid to criticize. After all, the path to destigmatization lies in discussion, openness, and understanding. Peace, y'all.